Hello and welcome to another update video about the NASDAQ. Yeah, it's time for an update again. The NASDAQ has pushed to new highs. I think at least here let me go to the 4-day chart and we see it a little bit. At least here the futures, I'm actually not quite sure if the cash market also pushed to new highs, but okay, we're looking here at the futures chart, and on the chart we have definitely seen a significant and substantial rally of the October lows. I have always highlighted, since I've been analyzing the NASDAQ, that another high is absolutely likely, even in a bearish scenario, because in all scenarios, one more high could be justified. And also, and that's different to the S&P 500, which was at least less bullish. We only had 3 waves down here on this chart of the July highs. So the July high was put in at around $16,070. And then we had off this high a WXY structure. And you cannot find a good way to count this actually in 5 waves. You cannot find a good way to count this in 5 waves. So we always had only a 3-wave move down really on this chart, indicating potentially more bullishness. Or, I mean, it can always go down, but then it would have been a diagonal pattern, and these are lower probability patterns. So I'm quite glad that it sort of followed the bigger picture analysis. What is highly unusual though, and that's a very similar situation to the S&P 500. What is highly unusual is that we've had a rally of the lows, of the end of October lows, which happened without any significant pullbacks. And and also for the S&P 500, while I expected a rally, a significant rally of those lows, what I didn't expect is that we would pretty much go to new highs in one go. So the rally was faster and more aggressive than initially assumed. I mean, we know that typically, October, November, December are quite favorable. It's quite a favorable season for the indices like the NASDAQ, the S&P 500. But that it happens without any significant pullbacks is quite rare. And here we have a situation that is really highly unusual, because due to the overall structure that happened since the October 22 lows, I have to assume that we are dealing here with an ending diagonal. So, I mean the diagonal of the October 22 lows. Yeah, because the move up happens in corrective structures. For example, what we are dealing with is a wave 1 in 3 waves. We have a wave 2. We have a wave 3 in 3 waves. We have a wave 4. And we have a wave 5 in 3 waves as well, A, B, C. Okay, and that's why this is so challenging to forecast really in the detailed wave structures, because we're dealing with corrective structures, okay? So the problem, and that is what really is making the analysis quite challenging, the problem is we haven't had any significant pullbacks. Now, we typically need to really get a good understanding of the structure. We typically need some kind of a deeper pullback along the way to give us a bit of a perspective of where we actually are. So that could be a B-wave pullback, which we've got here, but it was extremely shallow. Or it could just be a wave 2 correction, okay? But we haven't had anything that went beyond, I think, the 23.6 retrace. So extremely, unusually shallow. And again, while I expected a rally, what I didn't expect was such an aggressive rally. And that is basically also not the most likely scenario, because it typically doesn't happen like that. But nevertheless, we are in this situation, so we need to understand where we are. And I just wanted to give you that introduction, because it is quite important to understand that this is challenging, and why we need to, stay on our toes, why we need to be very cautious, because this is to a degree unprecedented, that we get such a rally without any deeper pullbacks, and especially to that extent. So it means, okay, we're not exactly sure what happens if we come down, I would expect at the moment still a corrective pullback. So if a pullback happens, that it's corrective and will then give us one more high. So the primary scenario at the moment is that we've had an A wave here, a B wave, which bottomed in November, and this is now a C wave to form a larger A wave. Then we could get a B wave pullback and a C wave rally afterwards. This is what I would prefer as a wave count. The C wave here, yeah, this bit is not too long. So it's still within the scope of what a C wave would do. So it's not overextended, but still we would have ideally liked to see this B wave a little lower, a deeper pullback. But if we break above a certain level, I will not expect this B wave pullback in white anymore. Yeah. So the white wave count is currently primary, but above 17,122, I will switch to the blue wave count. The blue wave count is just a different way of counting this ABC structure. Also not much clearer, because if I assume this was the A wave and this here is the B wave, also here this B wave was not really deep. So it creates another challenge, right? But the difference is that this was an A wave, this was a B wave, and we can extend from here in a C wave, and it can take us to a more significant top straight away, maybe around 18,500 points. And then we are basically here dealing with a 1-2 setup. We could then get a third wave, fourth wave, fifth wave. So when is a top in? Well, I can't really say, but what we can identify are these relevant levels of interest. We've got 16,911 as the next one, so we're currently consolidating below that level. Then 17,122. Above that level, I will focus on the blue wave count primarily. Then we've got 17,300 and 17,477. Now, don't get me wrong, above 17,122, the white count, yes, it's not the primary scenario anymore, but it's still a likely scenario. It's just less likely, okay? And then if we see a pullback, I would first watch, okay, is it maybe that wave 2? But primarily I'd be looking for a B wave. And again, when is the top in? Again, we can't really say, but those levels, we can take a look at those levels. And I would not assume that a top is in place. I've been saying that all along. We don't want to assume a top is in until the first micro support breaks. And it would be minimally a break below 16,571 that I would like to see to at least confirm that somewhat, a reliable top is in place. And then we can look at the structure of the pullback, and maybe it's a wave 2 or the B wave. In both scenarios, I would currently expect a corrective pullback, which can then send us higher. Now, that approach I think is good. Being cautious, watching for a pullback while being focused on further upside, as long as micro support levels are holding. Because I know so many analysts that went short basically since October, or even since October 22, which is ridiculous, or at least they've been bearish. And we don't want to do that. We want to focus on the trend, right? Not be biased, and let the market tell us when we have to expect a pullback. And we don't want to expect, we're watching for a pullback, that's different. We're watching for one, but we are only expecting it once we get a break of micro support. So that's my update about the NASDAQ. I hope you liked the update. If you did, please hit the like button, leave a comment and subscribe. If you're interested in daily updates about the S&P 500 and our stocks, then check out our Stocks and S&P 500 service. Link is in the description. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye-bye.